the real site where fascists organize and stuff is called Iron March, and then you also have Stormfront. And
is that that's like a social media group for those?
Okay. Iron March, it's a whole website. And I'm I know everything about that site and the people that are behind this.
This is 18-year-old Devon Arthurs. In 2017, he renounced his Nazi beliefs, converted to Islam, and then killed his 2 roommates for making fun of it. Then he claimed he was a hero, saving the world from 2 evil people who were planning to kill.
They're planning bombings and stuff like that on countless people. They're planning to kill civilian life.
If you think this is crazy, wait till you see the whole interrogation. Let's delve into the story of Devon Arthurs and try to understand his disturbing murder motive. Today's story begins in Tampa, Florida. Tampa is a major business center, but like many Florida cities, it's also home to splendid beaches, museums, theme parks, and lots of activities for the younger ones. But Devon Arthurs didn't seem to enjoy any of these. As a teen, he'd paired up with 3 other boys, Andrew Wunschuk, Jeremy Hillman, and Brandon Russell. Sadly, the only thing that united these 4 boys was their neo views. What's even stranger is none of the boys' families held these views. Jeremy's girlfriend Kiana said, Jeremy went through a lot of struggle in his life, and National Socialism offered him the rigidity he desired and offered him solutions for the things out of his control. So it's been really hard to try and tell his family, but yes, he did hold white supremacist beliefs and National Socialist beliefs. When Jeremy was 15, his mom found ultra right-wing conservative material on his computer. She confronted him about it and blocked his computer from accessing more hateful websites. But Jeremy found a loophole, and then he found a bunch of friends to share these distorted views with. Andrew felt he never fit in with any group his age. He never drank, used drugs, or partied. His dad, Walter, remembered Andrew was a very conservative guy. He looked at his generation and said, we're on the path to ruin. In November 2016, 6 months before turning 18, Andrew traveled to France and joined the French Foreign Legion, a force of volunteer soldiers from around the world to test his nerve with old school soldiering. But his stint didn't even last a month. Walter said he faked a shoulder injury to escape service. Andrew's beliefs were a show-off. They made him feel powerful, but he wasn't a tough soldier or a far-right conservative at heart. When he came back from France, Andrew had toned it down with his views. He was kind of a different kid when he came back. He realized this stuff was not his future. And here's where it gets interesting. Andrew and Jeremy lived in Massachusetts. Devon and Brandon lived in Tampa in a 2-story condo with access to a fishing pond. The 2 pairs of friends met online in 2016 on a terrible website for US fascists. Devon and Brandon had founded their own club called Atomwaffen, German for the atomic bomb. Soon enough, they'd made Andrew and Jeremy members too. Then in 2017, Brandon started pressuring Jeremy to move in with them in Tampa. Jeremy was planning to join the military, but he was completely broke and unsure about his next moves. So he accepted Brandon's invitation, at least for the summer. However, Jeremy would never leave that house again. Andrew and Jeremy decided to move into the boys' Tampa home together. Through Atomwaffen, Jeremy and Andrew had become best buddies, and they thought it would be a cool summer to fish and live rent-free in a beautiful house. They also thought Devon and Brandon would be serious people. They'd advertised a great deal of maturity and integrity on that website, at least from their point of view. But when the 2 friends arrived in Tampa, they discovered 2 teenage boys who played video games all day. The whole neo-Nazi act was a toxic display of masculinity and power. It gave the boys a sense of belonging. All 4 of them were different kinds of social outcasts. Together, they felt strong and special. Jeremy's girlfriend commented, Jeremy went down there expecting a break from the stress he was under in Massachusetts. As soon as he arrived in Florida, the stark difference between the promises made and the reality was apparent. Just days after his arrival, Andrew phoned his family. He was also disappointed. Andrew told his dad that he was the only one in the house cooking and cleaning. Also, Devon was making a big deal about his conversion to Islam. Wait, what?
Now, there were allegedly 4 so-called neo-Nazis living together in this particular place. And at one point, the suspect, who has been charged with first-degree murder, Devon Arthurs is his name, apparently had converted to Islam, even though he had sympathized with this neo-Nazi ideology. Now, after he had done so, Naturally, his neo-Nazi friends were disrespecting his newfound faith.
As it turns out, all the boys were disrespecting each other on a daily basis. Just a quick observation, it's hard to live with strangers, or people you barely know online. It's even harder for 4 irresponsible teens with warped views of the world to live together. They were acting like kids. Andrew and Jeremy were mocking Devon for playing video games all day and for wanting to convert to Islam. Devon and Brandon were mocking Andrew for hanging an American flag in his bedroom. He'd gotten the flag from an overseas deployment and was proud of it, but Devon and Brandon would pull it down from the wall and stomp on it just for a laugh. It was a neo-Nazi kids camp. On May 18th, Devon logged into his Adam Waffen website and picked a fight with other members about his new religious conversion. Needless to say, white supremacists aren't fans of Islam. Devon knew this, and he was looking for a conflict. The next day, he would shoot and kill Andrew and Jeremy, while Brandon was on National Guard duty. On May 19th, 2017, Devon pulled out his gun and repeatedly shot Andrew and Jeremy until they fell to their deaths, 2 weeks after they had arrived in Tampa. Then he ran into a smoke shop, still holding his gun, and held 3 people hostage until the police arrived. Finally, he surrendered. When he was arrested, he simply told the officer he had just killed his 2 roommates. His calm demeanor and matter-of-fact speaking was pretty shocking to the police, especially when they found out he was a freshly converted neo-Nazi.
Fortunately, most of the people that talk to me about this, they don't say stuff like that. So
they themselves were not.
For the record, my name is Kenny Necklinger. I'm a detective with Tampa Police. This is Gary Sandell, also detective with Tampa Police.
Before Kenny read Devon his Miranda rights, he wanted to make sure Devon wasn't under the influence of any drugs or medication. He also asked him if he had any history of mental illness, as this would come in handy later.
Have you ever been diagnosed with any kind of mental illness or anything like that might prevent you from having a conversation where you understand what I'm saying and I understand what you're saying?
No, I don't. I've never been prescribed with that. But I wish I went to a hospital before this. I wish I had listened to my family and just I wish I had followed what they were recommending me to do and stuff like that.
What's that regarding?
Regarding me going over there and going to get help.
Yep, as it turns out, Devon's family had struggled with Devon's many issues in the past, and they had urged him to seek psychiatric help, or at least counseling. But Devon was far too gone to realize that he needed help. However, he remembered some discussions he'd had with his family.
Yeah, it was mainly over depression and stuff like that. And it was never anything to this severity. Yeah.
Are you taking any medication at all? You never got to that point.
Never got to that point.
Okay. All right.
Devon asked Kenny if he could speak to doctors when he got booked into jail. He knew something was wrong with him and he wanted to get help, but it was a minute too late for Andrew and Jeremy. Up to this point, you might think, okay, Devon changed his white supremacist beliefs and now he's trying to become a better person. But first of all, he'd just committed a double murder. And second of all, watch what he says when Kenny asks why he did this.
Adam Waffen Division is a terrorist organization. It's a neo-Nazi organization that I was a part of before I converted.
What's it called?
Adam Waffen Division.
Okay.
And I remember my roommate Brandon. He's alive. The guy that was in the American uniform.
Uh-huh.
I hope he gets his shit together. I hope he gets his life together. He's a good person. But the things that they were planning were horrible. They're planning bombings and stuff like that on countless people. They're planning to kill civilian life.
This was a shocking allegation. According to Devon, his 3 roommates were planning to plant bombs in public places and kill dozens of people. When he killed Jeremy and Andrew, he was doing the world a favor. Honestly, how narcissistic do you have to be to take the moral high ground after you've killed 2 people?
Well, were they specific in their plans?
Power lines, nuclear reactors, synagogues, things like that. And the reason why I mention this is because it's self-evident. You go into the place, there's a giant Azov Regiment flag that's in the background. Azov Regiment is an organization in Ukraine, which is an NS movement that crucifies people and has harmed a lot of people. That came directly from there. These people were not good people, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, really? Well, this was his and Brandon's house.
How did you end up at that apartment? How did you move in with them, and how did that go?
I'll explain. So like I remember when I was I'll just start from the beginning of like these beliefs and stuff like
Sure,
that. So
that's fine.
When I was 14, I first like started getting into these organizations and stuff like that.
When he was 17, Devon claimed he outgrew his racist beliefs and converted to Islam. But here's the dark side.
Like, you know, I'll be honest, like I'm sympathetic with groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and stuff like that.
So he jumped from one hateful ideology to another. His conversion was a way of saying, now I hate those other people. Either way, Devon was looking to do harm.
So, I mean, that day I was watching videos of infants that were killed by American bombs.
Which was that today?
Yeah, and that's what it was driving me crazy. It's like, that was getting me, and I was also seeing the posts that was being made in an encrypted chat by other members about how they want to kill blacks and how they want to kill
Members of what? Which
the same organizations, or, yeah.
Which organizations?
Adam Puffin.
Okay, so why was he living with Brandon, who was condoning these exact views?
And I was living there because I was living primarily with the guy in the American uniform, the Brandon. And he's a decent human being that can be reasoned with.
What exactly did you say?
They would say stuff like, I want to blow up refugee ships. They would say stuff like they want to go target like blacks, like how Dylan Roof did. These people, they were not just innocent people.
Notice how Devon insists Brandon, Andrew, and Jeremy were the ones who were wrong, not him. But Kenny saw through the act, so he asked Devon if he had any evidence of the three being violent.
Have they ever done any bad things, specifically that you know about? Maybe that you were a part of, that you weren't part of?
I was never a part. We never targeted anybody, but we had plans. We had guys in the American military that literally would go to like bases and steal huge amounts of equipment. We're talking Kevlar, night vision, stuff like that, for the intent of criminal activity, i.e., you know, targeting government structures, targeting people.
Devon calmly claimed that he and his former friends helped the Azov regiment by hacking telecom networks held by the separatists.
So we hacked factories and we shut down electricity. And I remember there was an article that a factory got shut down and 12 people had died, like frozen to death, and I was horrified by that. I was absolutely mortified.
Because you were a part of that?
Yeah, I was mortified.
These claims were never verified. Were Devon and Brandon really implicated in that, or was he trying to feel important in front of the cop? Devon said Brandon had only rented that house a month and a half before the murders, so he hadn't been living with Brandon for that long either. However, Andrew and Jeremy had only been there for 2 weeks. The detective could sense they weren't necessarily responsible for any murderous plans the other two might have had.
How long had you known these guys?
I've known these guys almost for a year.
Okay. Where'd you first meet them?
Met them online first. And then I went up to Boston with Brandon, and I hung out with them for a few
You met Brandon online as well?
Yeah.
When Kenny asked Devon about the website the two met through, Devon said it had since been deleted for its extremist views. Then he went on a rant about several such websites.
The real site where fascists organize and stuff is called Iron Merge, and then you also have Stormfront. And
Is that that's like a social media group for those? Okay.
Iron Merge, it's a whole website. And I'm like, I know everything about that site and the people that are behind this shit.
Once again, he put himself in a position of power and importance. He knew everything about the site and its people. Devon saw himself as a helper, a vigilante hero, helping the detectives put an end to neo-Nazis in America.
And these people were basically, if you're familiar with the Order of Bob Matthews, or whatever, he was a guy that killed like a bunch of federal agents and stuff like that. Like that's basically who they venerate. And these people, they have no human empathy like we do.
Like we do? Who? Devon and the detectives? It's almost funny if there weren't fascists and murders involved.
I wish that if I could go back and do something over, I would sign myself into a hospital to work about my anger issues and my rational thinking skills, which I don't think is at par of
But I think this goes beyond anger issues. I think it's something a little deeper for you. I think it's more of it's a passion that you're passionate about doing good for people.
Kenny fed his inflated ego to help him get to the bottom of the story.
Forgive me, I'm just trying to. You're educating me in this whole process. So yeah. I'm going to ask questions as a student sitting here. You believe You have a faith, you said. What is your faith?
I'm a Muslim.
Okay. Does that coincide with this organization you're part of?
No, not at all.
So how long have you been a Muslim?
I've been a Muslim since June of 2016.
Okay, so fairly recently.
Yeah.
Have you still maintained a part in this organization, or is that about when your ties to this organization were cut?
My main ties to this organization is like, I was a part of it out of necessity. I needed a place to stay away from my family. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I should have lived with them. I was just trying to get out of the house and stuff like that.
That didn't make much sense. If he'd been a Muslim for 11 months, why would he have moved in with Brandon, whom he despised so much, a month and a half prior to the murders? There are so many ways one could get away from their family. Moving in with a neo-Nazi who hates your belief should be at the bottom of that list.
That's why I was a part of it. It was mainly to try to get people away from this shit and try to basically.
That's when you first joined up?
No, this is when, I was already part of it when I converted. When I converted, I was like, while I'm in here, I can't just leave it. If I left it, then I'd probably be killed or something like that.
Devon alternated between two reasons for his staying with Brandon. On the one hand, he claimed he would have been killed if he left. However, he was the only one killing. On the other hand, he claimed he was just trying to help other people convert to more peaceful beliefs. Again, Devon saw himself as a moral vigilante hero. But Kenny was one step ahead. When the officers at the smoke shop arrested Devon, he told them he killed his roommates because they were making fun of his newfound faith. Watch how Kenny reduces his motives to ashes with one simple question.
But you made no secret about it to even Brandon, I imagine, of your faith, right? They knew what you were about.
Yeah.
And they still tolerated you.
Yeah, they still tolerated. Yeah, they did, barely.
There are two big mistakes on Devon's behalf here. One, his claim that he killed Andrew and Jeremy for disrespecting his belief is invalid. He just said they tolerated his faith. Two, the moral side of his murder motive has just been invalidated too. Devon claimed his roommates hated people of his faith and planned to kill such people, but he just said they continued to let him live there, including Brandon, whom he was painting as the leader of Adam Waffen.
Brandon's literally somebody that has knowledge to build a nuclear bomb.
Do you know if these materials are inside that condo right now?
No, there's no nuclear materials. Actually, there is. Yes, there is nuclear materials in that garage. There is some nuclear materials.
Okay, what's in that garage?
In that garage is HMTD. Yeah, those explosives. Yeah, some ammonium nitrate, I believe, and I know that there's some radiated materials that he was able to bring in through the Bahamas. And because he's a Bahamian citizen, he was able to bring it in.
This is what the police found in Brandon's garage. In the condo's garage, they say bomb squad technicians found volatile explosive material stored in a cooler near homemade detonator components and several pounds of ammonium nitrate. Two sources of radiation also were detected on the premises, they say. When Devon led the police to the condo, Brandon was outside dressed in military uniform and crying on the front steps. Brandon was not prepared to find a crime scene at his place, but clearly he was prepared for planting bombs if he wanted to. A federal judge ordered him detained as he agreed Brandon was a risk to the public. However, there was no further evidence that Brandon was indeed planning to use his explosives. When investigators questioned him about the explosives they found at the condo, he said he had joined an engineering club in college and used the material to boost homemade rockets. This might sound like a bunch of lies, but it turns out every one of Brandon's friends knew him as a science nerd. In a YouTube video with 3.6 million views since its posting in March, he helped Kevin Kolher, the host of The Backyard Scientist, use an electrical charge to blow a hole in a slab of raw meat. As soon as the news of the double homicide broke out, the four boys' families were shocked and heartbroken. Jeremy and Andrew's families spoke out, insisting their sons were on the right track. Their views had waned out with time, and they were not living with Devon and Brandon with the intent to kill. They were just looking for a cool summer in Florida. Their families dismiss his claims as the self-serving rantings of a sociopath who initially told investigators that he killed his friends for teasing him about his recent conversion to Islam. Even Brandon's Adam Waffen bestie said Devon lied about their seriousness. We're not here to bomb the US government. That's absolutely ridiculous. Everyone but Devon had the same view. These were a bunch of awkward teenage boys with social exclusion issues who took to the internet to rant about hatred and feel powerful for once in their lives. However, none of them had a history of violence or a criminal record, not even a history of physical altercations at school. It was all in their heads. That is not to say that hate speeches don't do harm, especially when they can influence thousands of others online to take the same disgusting ideologies. However, according to Devon, the boys were involved in the worst possible organizations on Earth.
You know, it's a real deal. They have a real intent. Like, I need you both to pretty much swearing that this is not going to get released. I can't give certain information, but that's on.
Yeah, he's in the middle of a grand conspiracy theory, and he can only help the detectives bring those evil people down.
I'm telling you something that I wanted. I'm telling you stuff that the FBI should also be hearing.
Devon had read about some terrible things done by white supremacists throughout history. Then he attributed those things to his 3 roommates to justify his hatred toward them. But as far as Kenny was concerned, he needed hard evidence to prosecute Brandon or prove Andrew or Jeremy were at fault in any way. So he kept pressing Devon for any relevant information about the 3 young men.
Anything else in that apartment or that condo that you think we should be made aware of, especially if we're going to go in there and do any kind of searching or investigation? What's in there that we need to be initially made aware of? You mentioned bombs, you mentioned things in the garage, or at least
the things in the garage are the bombs, pretty much, like explosive materials.
That's all Devon had against his 3 friends, Brandon's explosive materials. And he insisted Brandon was planning on bombing public places, even when the cops suggested the materials could be for other activities.
Yeah, nothing's been constructed yet, but this is clearly stuff that is lined up for the explosives there.
That's the purpose of those items?
Yeah, so that's the entire purpose of it.
You guys don't build model rockets and go out in the back and shoot them off.
But remember what Brandon's friends had said. That was exactly what he was doing with the explosives. Devon's lies and hypocrisy came out in another way toward the end of the interrogation. Remember how he said he was only sticking around with his group in hope of changing their beliefs? Now he gave a greater reason.
Why did you remain amongst these guys? Now, it begs the question as to why they tolerated you there, but why did you tolerate being around them?
Because I was an idiot, and I was just mainly thinking along the lines of, oh wow, I get to stay here in this really nice apartment, in this really nice condo, while paying a rent of like $120 a month, and I have internet and stuff like that, so I might as well just, stay here.
Yeah, that sounds like a more honest reason. And if Devon was such a righteous anti-racist now, how come he was living with a bunch of people who, according to him, were planning to bomb refugee camps?
How do you think you would have continued to tolerate this or handle this? Do you think you would have been driven out at some point?
I think that I would have definitely been driven out. At my boiling point, I was posted just messaging, I was literally, I had the Skype open, and I was like about to type, like, dude, I'm packing my shit back to Orlando. You guys can go off, pretty much. And I was gonna then contact the FBI or some local police to go like that.
It's simply crazy that Devon speaks so calmly about his moral high ground, his hero personality, and his plans to stop his friend's neo party when he was the only one with 2 murders on his record. He is so delusional, it hurts.
Well, do you think that whatever plan that you guys were going to carry out, specifically the lines down on Alligator Alley, do you think someone else is Brandon going to continue? Do you think it's still going to happen?
No, it's not going to happen. Brandon's entire condo is now a police quarantine. He doesn't have access to the materials. He doesn't have access to the manpower.
Devon really believed he helped put an end to Brandon's evil plans by killing Andrew and Jeremy. Devon didn't resist arrest or harsh punishment. His primary concern was seeing a doctor in prison.
Very, very concerned that when I go to the next place, I'd much rather, if I can, go to a hospital or immediately see the doctors when I go to the jail. I think that I would much rather be at a mental hospital where I should have been, because my family's been telling me, like, go to a hospital, try to get this stuff sorted and stuff like that. And I'd very much like to go do that.
Wait a minute. Mental hospital, he says. Was Devon trying to manipulate the detective into declaring him criminally insane and get a lighter sentence? If that was what he was doing, then Devon didn't know the law. It's not the investigators who do that, it's psychiatrists, and the decision is taken in court, not in the interrogation room. Devon ended the interrogation by asking Kenny to put him in contact with the FBI so that he could save more lives.
I think that it would open some eyes to a much bigger thing than what happened today. And I think that could definitely, basically save a lot of lives overall.
But as Kenny asked about the evidence he had, Devon only dug his own hole deeper. He confessed that he still had all the usernames for the neo-Nazi websites he described earlier. How could this be if he'd been a converted Muslim for 11 months? And if he was so willing to meet with the FBI now, why didn't he call them before instead of killing his roommates? Devon Arthurs was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of armed kidnapping, and 2 counts of aggravated assault. But initially, he was deemed incapable of standing trial. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and autism, among a long list of disorders.
The court says Arthur suffers from schizoaffective disorder. He's also been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder.
For 3 years, Devon spent time in the Developmental Disabilities Defendant Program, and beginning in 2020, he underwent competency restoration treatment. Brandon Russell was not involved in the murders, nor was he ever accused of planning any violent acts, but he later pleaded guilty to federal charges of possessing explosives. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and has since been released. Meanwhile, Devon is drifting in and out of jails, courtrooms, and hospitals. Attorneys, psychiatrists, and judges have yet to find a common conclusion and bring his case to trial. Either way, it's unlikely Devon will ever be free again. The only thing he has to say for himself: I prevented the deaths of a lot of people because they wanted to build a Fourth Reich. It's truly heartbreaking how little he understands about what he did. In his warped mind, he was the hero in this disturbing tale. He might never express remorse and give the victims' families the closure they need. Thanks for watching, you guys. What do you think about this crazy case? Do you know of any other similar interrogations? Let me know in the comments, and before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell button. See you next time, and stay safe.